Hello everyone, this is part 26 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. A large wooden gate, grown by the power of the Shodaime Hokage, loomed in the distance. It was a sight visible to the traveling group that consisted of Jiraiya and company. For one it meant salvation, a crew from the agony of forgetfulness, for another it was a foreboding symbol and sign for a horror that would come to pass. For others it was a sign of a brand new adventure. The sight of the gate and its walls were normally a sight in themselves to behold, but to people who had lived a long life seeing even greater things it was the promise of a new experience that brought them excitement, and not the majesty of the walls that protected Konohagakure no Sato. When the group was finally in range for the Chunin guards to see them, the group collectively pushed Jiraiya to the front. The Chunin guards were immediately able to recognize them. The guards were given instructions as to inform the Hokage when Jiraiya would arrive, so one of the guards shunshined to report the arrival of Jiraiya. When Jiraiya and company were signing in the logbook of the gate, the Hokage had arrived at the gate with Shizune in tow. Once Tsunade spotted Jiraiya among the crowd of people that he had brought with him, she walked up to him. Not seeing Naruto anywhere near him, she demanded to know where he was. Even the two gate guards wanted to know where he was, since they considered Naruto as one of their friends, the two guards being Izumo and Kotetsu. Jiraiya stuttered out that he had absolutely no idea where the orange-clad youth was. Upon hearing the conversation, Rosuto Naruto made his way over to the arguing couple. "Excuse me," Naruto said. Tsunade stopped her fist from impacting with Jiraiya's head so that she could pay attention to the new arrival. "Yes, my name is Rosuto Naruto of Rosuto no Kuni." "Rosuto. Naruto." "Yes, ma'am. From Rosuto no Kuni." "Yes, ma'am. Why are you here?" "Otu-sama told us to come here and wait for him here." "Your two-san is Rosuto Juashu, daimyo of Rosuto no Kuni. Upon our arrival, the gates of Rosuto no Kuni have been opened to the world. We mean you no harm. Might we take our conversation to your office or to a meeting room?" "Jiraiya, is this true?" Tsunade asked the L she was holding onto. "Ah, yeah. He really is from that country. How do you know?" "I've been there, so can we take this conversation to your office or something?" "Yes, Tsunade-san, we really should move our little conversation somewhere more private," Tsukiko said, entering the conversation. "Tsunade, we really should. She's the wife of the ruler of Rosuto no Kuni." "Okay, fine." Jiraiya and company followed Tsunade to the Hokage Tower, to one of the conference rooms that the tower had. There the members of the Rosuto contingent sat down on the available chairs. Tsunade sitting down as well, with Shizune standing behind her. Jiraiya opted to stand. After the Rosuto group introduced themselves, Naruto spoke. "Otu-sama just told us to meet up with Ero Sennin, and come here. He said that he would be meeting us here." "You've already said that. Is there any other reason as to why you would chose to be in Konoha?" Tsunade asked. "Probably to form a peace agreement or something, not like it would matter if we were ever to go to war with you, hee. Our hidden villages are more than enough to overpower this pathetic waste of space," Kira said, which wasn't like him. "How can you say that Konoha is a waste of space? Your first impression is starting to sour." "Never mind. It was not my place to have said such an insult, I apologize." Apology accepted. "Now why would you approach Konoha first, before any of the other nations and hidden villages? Why Konoha specifically and not the capital of Hai no Kuni?" "Because Konoha is the birthplace of one of the heroes of Rosuto no Kuni," a new voice said. The new voice came out of nowhere. There was no visible new person in the room. The voice sounded like three people speaking at the exact same time, the sound coming out of the same mouth. It was a combination of a child, a young man, and an old man. "Show yourself," Tsunade ordered. After hearing such an order, the non-existent wind in the room blew here and there. The Anbu that were hidden in the corners of the room were forced to reveal themselves. Jiraiya and his group of adventurers were all too used to such things happening around them that they were not affected by such winds. The Rosuto group at some point in their lives had experienced something similar. Outside the room, outside the tower, above the village, dark clouds started to converge. Thunder and lightning filled the darkened sky. The clouds had covered the sun. Gale force winds moved through the air. They were so strong that the shinobi had to use chakra just to stay in place. The civilians had to hang on to grounded things to stop from being blown away. Then came the rain, from a sunny sky, to rain that fell on the village like a waterfall. The floodgates of the heavens had seemingly opened up and let loose the torrents of water that had been kept bottled up in the skies for centuries. Once the first droplet of water hit the ground, the residents and inhabitants of Konoha and a few miles away from the village felt the ground shake and quake. After the first movement of the ground, another followed, followed by another, and another and another. Looking up into the sky, the people could see the horror that was descending on the village. Black dragons were breathing gouts of flame. Along with these flying behemoths were giant birds of prey, screeching in sky, filling the hearts of many with terror. Some of the people, most notably the Nara clan, witnessed the shadows moving on their own in the direction of the Hokage Tower. The Inuzuka clan noticed that their partners were howling like hounds from hell after the appearance of the first dark cloud. Some of the members of the Feral clan had joined in on the howling. The Aberrane clan's bugs were flying around out of control. They flew unhindered by the rain or by the winds. They were all speaking incoherently, so much so that the Aberrane themselves found it hard to pick up anything. The seeds of chaos that had long been kept within the village were suddenly all at the same time growing. They had taken root a long time ago, but it was only now that their purpose was being revealed. Chaos and disorder was upon the village, hidden in the leaves. Within the conference room, the winds and the shadows were converging, much like the clouds outside. So with these two elemental forces, within the winds and shadows, thunder could be heard, lightning could be seen on the surface. Then suddenly, there was a deafening howl, one which reverberated throughout the whole village. Beyond the walls of the village, a giant nine-tailed fox could be seen. It was towering above the tops of the trees. It too was howling, or more like roaring, announcing its presence to the village. At the sudden appearance of the horror that struck the village all those years ago, those whose hearts were already filled with terror nearly collapsed from possible cardiac arrest. If the Kyuubi were to attack the village now, there would be very little that they could do, since this time around there was no Namikaze Minato to S life, and sun, to getting rid or sealing the beast. Luckily this Kyuubi apparition is not going to attack the already plagued village. With one loud clap of thunder, there was a deafening voice that filled the ears of all those that could hear. In the room that Tsunade was in, the winds and shadows had formed a steadily solidifying form in front of the cage. Once the winds within the room sd down, the occupants of the room too heard the voice, and the words of doom spoken. Konoha, I'm Barak. With the words spoken by the voice, and sitting across Tsunade, in his battle gear, sitting beside his wife and son, was Rosuto Juashu. Outside, all evidence that something monumental had occurred had vanished. The clouds, the dragons, the Kyuubi, everything, all that remained was the forest, the village and the people. Although secretly the dragons, rocks, and their riders were hidden in the surrounding forest. Back in the conference room, all Tsunade, Shizune, and Jiraiya could do was stare at the person sitting there, at Rosuto Juashu. So, Bar-chan, how ya been while I've been gone? Silence greeted him, well, not complete silence, since Shizune, Tsunade, and Jiraiya had all fainted. The Anbu were tending to their unconscious forms. You think I went a bit too far? Juashu asked his family. Not at all, too, Sama. Naruto said. Maybe a little bit, Naruko said. They fainted, and you're asking if you went a bit too far? Tsukiko shouted in his ear, which caused the three unconscious people to return to the land of the living. Yo, Juashu said to the three other people he considered as members of his extended family. I've been through too much crap as it is, so I'll just sit down on the floor. Good to see you're okay, Naruto. Juashu. I was not expecting this to happen, Mikio said. As he spoke, he drew attention to himself, which caused both Tsunade and Shizune to finally realize who he was, which made him faint, again. Did I say something wrong? Mikio asked. Well, it's like this, Mikio, you look like this guy the first once knew. Jiraiya tried to explain, but was cut off by Mikio. I finally remember, Mikio shouted as he jumped out of his seat, I should be S. On a side note, Jiraiya remind me to K the voice next time we meet up with him or one of his friends or something. Hey, so, Miki-kun, who art thou then? Haru asked. Tsunade regained consciousness, but Shizune was quicker than her Shushu. Shizune quickly made her way to Mikio, and pounced on him, hugging him tightly, as if expecting the man to suddenly vanish. He had told him that he had amnesia, but during the introductions the two women had not paid him much mind. But now, well, you get the picture. D. Dan. H. How? Was Tsunade's stuttered question. I'll answer that one, Juashu said, Kyonshi-sensei has a really different sense of humor, so does Hayakume aka the voices you lot have dubbed him. The hell? Juashu-sama, you're the reason Mikio knew that Jiraiya was missing a student and kept calling him Ero Senin. Haru asked incredulously. I thought that you'd be used to things like this by now, I mean after the produce incident, I'd have thought you'd have been used to it by now. You know about that. Haru, Jiraiya, and Mikio shouted at the same time. Yeah. Hello. Prankster. Definitely where I got my SKS. Naruto said. After a few minutes of storytelling, and explaining, the non-Rosuto people understood the story, in summary well, it really couldn't be summarized. But in the end the non-Rosuto people just accepted the bizarre tale as truth. Oh yeah? Ero Senin, you might want to rush over to the hospital and look for your wife, it's nearly time, Juashu told his other teacher. After hearing those words Jiraiya left a cloud that was shaped as himself in his place as he rushed towards the hospital. Ikaku and Chang'e following him to serve as his support crew. Mikio left the room with a dazed Tsunade and Shizune to catch up with the two women. The Anbu were ordered to remove Juashu from the shinobi roster, as well as all records of his ever being a shinobi of He Leaf, since it had been proven in the past that the Leaf did not deserve to be affiliate with such a person. Juashu tried to protest the removal of his achievements, but even someone like him could not persuade Tsunade, when she was in one of her moods, even a slightly dazed one. The Rosuto contingent were told that they could either stay in a hotel or where they had arranged to stay if they had made prior arrangements, which they did. Juashu, through Rosuto Union, had bought his apartment complex, and had all the hateful residents removed from it, aka evicted. The complex would serve as the living quarters of the Rosuto contingent until they left the village for home. After dropping off the things in the building, in virus rooms, and after Juashu revitalized his plants, the group went their separate ways around the village. If there was one thing they all enjoyed, it was going exploring, each day being a new adventure in itself. It was good to add a few twists and turns in such a daily routine. The people of Konoha somehow quickly forgot the spectacular events that had just transpired. They would only remember such things once the whole village was informed about the recently revealed Rosuto no Kuni. Haru and Juashu had decided to roam the village, Juashu in search of people he knew, and Haru since he thought that it was cool that he and Juashu looked somewhat alike, the difference being their skin color, and clothes. The two men decided that instead of walking they would zip through the village, at speeds that only the two of them could travel at and not get tired. It was a nice day to give several shinobi and kunoichi the shocks of their lives at the sight of two yellow streaks make their way around the village. Juashu's search for friends had mutated into a race between two speed demons. A little while later they were joined by an open gates Mato Guy and Rock Lee. All four men were screaming about the power of youth, the green pair doing it since it was what they did, Haru since it seemed like fun, and Juashu just cause it was fun, even though the hugging that the two green men did was still a bit unnerving. Tsukiko, Yoshiko, Amiko and Naruko had decided to visit the local hot springs and soak a little. Relaxation was a good thing every now and then. Their onsen time was going to be free thanks to Naruto who had decided to go to the onsen as well, and with his keen senses make sure that no one peeked on his wife, sister, stepmother, and stepsister. Even while relaxing his sadistic prankster side was still at the surface of his being. He had pranking tools sealed in his arms at all times, in preparation for any event that would call for their use or need. While in the male side of the onsen, Naruto was accompanied by Hitaki Kakashi, Yumino Iruka, and Sarutobi Asuma. The three men did not pay Naruto any mind, until they witnessed the man vanish before their very eyes. A second later they saw another man flying above their heads in the direction of the Hokage mountain, after which Naruto returned to his place in the water, as if he had not momentarily vanished, and beaten the living out of someone. The two Junin and one Chunin were speechless, so they opted to just stare at him. It was an eerie experience to one who usually made others feel unease. Could you stop staring? If I'd have known that Konoha had so many gay LS I'd have just waited outside for my wife to be done with the hot springs, Naruto told the three men. The three men quickly diverted their eyes and sputtered incoherently, but at the same time understandably, that they were not gay, or LS, and that they had a healthy interest in the opposite S. Kakashi's orange book being present, even while he was in the water, didn't help his case. So, you new here? I'm Yumi no Iruka, by the way. Iruka tried to start a conversation with Naruto. Relatively new, my family is just visiting for the time being, Naruto said. Well, I'm Hatake Kakashi, just in case you didn't know, sorry about the staring, it's just that it was such a surprising action. Salright, my two-san used to beat the blood out of me whenever I went peeking. I only realized why such an action was intolerable after my wife told me that there was someone who managed to peek on her. I'm Sarutobi Asuma, I guess I can sympathize with you, not that I'm married. But I do have a girlfriend. Well, since the three of you have introduced yourselves, I guess I should too, Naruto said. I'm Rosuto Naruto. At the mention of his name, the three men were shocked to find someone else with such a name. They totally disregarded the fact that he was a Rosuto, which was an obvious indication that he was someone of importance from the rumored Rosuto no Kuni. Who'd have thought that someone else would name a kid, Naruto, Asuma said. I'd never have believed it had I not heard it myself, Iruka said. Yeah, Kakashi agreed. What's wrong with my name? You got a problem with it? I'll have you know that my two-san gave me his old name. So if you got a problem with the name, say so now, or I'll throw you three over the wall, Naruto said. There's no need for such actions, it's just that someone we know is named Naruto, that's all. We have nothing against you, your family, or your name, Kakashi said. Alright then, Naruto said as he returned to looking out for LS that would dare peek on his family, as well as half relaxing in the water. On the other side of the wall, the Rosuto women were accompanied by Mitarashi Anko, Yuhi Kurenai, Ichiraku Ayami, and Hyuga Hinata. Tsukiko was busy with making sure that her daughter was comfortable in the waters, acting just like a mother was, but a bit over the top in her actions. Naruko was trying to peek on the men's side, with Anko trying to help her. Amiko was just lounging around, sipping some sake that she had smuggled into the onsen. Amiko was also trying to get the young Hyuga to have some of the bubbly. Kurenai and Ayami were talking about ramen for some reason. While her mother was fussing over her like she wasn't a grown woman herself, she listened to the conversations of the other women around her. Amiko had managed to get the Hyuga partially out of her shell after meeting a new person who. The Hyuga had opened up and acted rather shocked or surprised to learn that Amiko was married to a man named Naruto. The young Hyuga must have been thinking of a certain ex-Uzumaki, which was true. The young Hyuga thought that she had missed her chance with her long-time not exactly secret crush. When Amiko described her husband, the young woman looked relieved. Boy, was she in for a shocker to know that the man named Naruto was the son of the married man that the young Hyuga was longing for. A few minutes later, Amiko and Hinata were dragged into the conversation that Kurenai and Ayami were having. Their conversation wasn't merely about ramen, but about the best ways to get a man. Supposedly the best way into a man's heart was through his stomach or something like that. Amiko said that in some cases with her husband it was true, the man would act like the obeying puppy at the mere mention of ramen, miso specifically. Once again that made Hinata get that longing look on her face for one reason or another. Ayami noted that her boyfriend was not exactly like that. He loved her cooking, especially her miso ramen, but for different reasons. Kurenai was trying to think of a way to get Asuma to pop the question, with Ayami giving suggestions by using ramen flavors as tools to explain or as metaphors. Amiko's suggestion was for the woman to just do the job herself, though a bit unorthodox, it would or should get the desired results. By the wall of the onsen, Anko and Naruko were still at it. They were still mashing their boss together in an attempt to act like the men that they were attempting to peek on. For some reason the defenses of the men's side were more formidable than those of the women's side of the baths. Naruko hadn't realized that it was due to her brother being on the other side of the wall that gave the men's side such a defense against peeking. The presence of Kakashi also added to the strengthened defenses of the men's side. But Anko and Naruko were determined not to lose to a few tricks employed by men. Yahiko and Ryu found themselves in one of Konoha's many bars. The two men wanted to see if they could get themselves wasted or plastered, in the fastest time possible. Little did they know that Morino Abiki was also in the same bar as they were. Once the two men got drunk, Fist and feet started flying everywhere. The two men had turned into berserkers bent on total destruction of one another. It was worse than Rock Lee when he went into drunken fist mode. Abiki had to call in some backup just to take the two men into custody and brought to the interrogation detention center, where the master of interrogation would make them spill their life stories. Too bad Abiki had never in his life encountered men who had worked for years for and with two Rosutos that were more than clinically insane. Juashu and his son were more than enough to make any sane man immune to the tricks of the most experienced interrogation specialist. At the end of the session it was Abiki who was lying on the chairs while the two other men, who were just tipsy, were listening to the man's woes, life, story, problems, as if they were professional therapists, which only Ryu was. Yahiko was the Rosuto spy master as well as tea and interrogation master. The Anbu that had gone in to check on Abiki's progress were astonished and astounded to find the Tokubutsu Junin being the one interrogated. The Anbu that opted to stay out of the single cell grew weary, their number kept decreasing and decreasing. Every Anbu that had gone into the room had yet to leave it. While Haru and Juashu were racing around the village, the women were in the hot springs, Ryu and Yahiko were doing their thing in the Anbu HQ, Sunio had decided to do as the artist in him did best. He showcased his art to the youth of the village. He went to a park that was filled with children, then he set up his mini stage, then brought out his puppets. He managed to entrance the children into watching his puppet show, which showed the adventures that Juashu had gone through, as well as the adventures that Jiraiya and his gang had faced. Throughout the whole day, that is what Sunio did. Secretly he had made other puppets, those life-sized ones, to walk into the park sometime after his presentation began. If people knew who his master was, they still would have been surprised at what they would have found. The sheer number of puppets that were moving around would have made Akasuna no Sasori green with jealousy. But of course not everyone was able to spot the puppets for what they were. Not even Sunio's wife was able to do such a thing. Only his children and grandchildren, and all those that learned the art from him and his master knew how to spot them, but those students and other masters were still unable to spot them all. One of the reasons why Sunio's clan was so large was because more than half of the members of the clan were actually just puppets. Temari was one of the people who were watching the puppet show, alongside her was Shikamaru. The two of them witnessed the puppet show that was orchestrated by one man, and the two of them agreed that they would speak to him after his puppet show production. Sometime during the afternoon, one of the ongoing puppet shows had featured the story of how Monzemon had destroyed a fortress with only 10 puppets. That part was the one part of the whole production that caught Temari's eye. The story of Chikamatsu Monzemon was one story that was rarely mentioned or told outside of Suna. This one puppeteer seemed to possess intimate knowledge about the legendary puppet master. When the show produced miniature versions of the Chikamatsu puppets, Temari didn't know what to think of the puppeteer anymore. With puppets so similar to the puppets of Suna's puppet mistress, Temari really wanted to know or just talk to the puppeteer. Shikamaru didn't notice that something was odd about a third of the adults in the audience. On the outside they seemed like real people, but the mere presence of the puppet master controlling more than 200 little puppets all at the same time, made the Chunin feel uneasy. It seemed that Sunio had noticed the curiosity of the Junin and the Chunin pair when he decided to bring out a puppet that looked exactly like him. He visibly gave the puppet the strings to the others and went to the pair to whose curiosity he had piqued. So, is there something about my collection that you want to know about? Sunio asked the pair. Who are you? Temari asked. What are your intentions towards the village? Shikamaru asked. Sunio pointed to himself. I am Hyakume Sunio, puppet master at your service. He gave the two a bow. As to why I am here. Well, I'm here on the orders of my lord, Rosuto Juashu. He'll be staying in the village for a while. You haven't answered my question, Shikamaru stated. Oh, but I have. I am here on the order, my lord. That is all the purpose I need. My intentions towards the village. The same as those of my lords, whatever they may be. Worry not, your cage has already met with us. You could be lying, Shikamaru said. Why would I lie? Why would I need to, when I, like my master before me, has the power and ability to bring down this village with but a mere flick of my finger? Who is your master then? Temari asked. Would you believe, Chikamatsu Monzemon? I'd like to, but that would be impossible. That man lived more than 100 years ago, Temari said. Alas, Tidying not true, my master still live this day. He lives in the province of Sakura in my homeland of Rosuto no Kuni. I'm sure you've at least heard of it. There have been rumors flying around the continent these past 2 weeks. How are we to believe that you are who you claim to be? Do you have some form of proof? Shikamaru asked. Why, yes I do, Sunio said in a laughing manner. My clan specializes in the art of puppetry. Unknown to most of my clan, more than half of my clansmen are actually puppets. Proof of my mastery can be seen even here. As I am sure you, young Nara, have more or less guessed. You mean to tell me that I'm right? That a number of the adults in the audience of your little production are in all actuality puppets? Constructs of your imagination? Shikamaru asked. Indeed I do. I would also have you believe that I am more than 1,000 years old. Preposterous. No one can live that long. Shikamaru exclaimed. You sound not like the Nara my lord described to me, Sunio said. Shika-kun, he's kind of right in a sense, you aren't acting like yourself. You are acting like a young Nara I once had under my care, Sunio admitted, but she left Rosuto no Kuni in my care some years ago. Last I heard she had married and had a son. Perchance, would your mother's name be Yoshino? Shikamaru kind of fainted after hearing that question. Temari tried and failed to revive him. I guess it must be true then, so young lady, do you perchance know the way to his home? I'd like to see how my one-time student has been doing all these years. He doesn't live with his mother anymore, you know. That's fine, if you can't wake him his mother should know how to. So is it okay to just leave your puppets alone? It's fine, in a sense they have a life of their own, they'll make their way home, when the show is over. If you say so. I do. Temari and Sunio brought Shikamaru to the home of his parents and not his apartment. The person that answered the door was not Yoshino, but Shikaku, the Nara patriarch. He bid him enter and bring his son in. The two people brought the unconscious young Nara in the house and dumped him on the couch. Shikaku then led him to the kitchen where Yoshino was preparing dinner. Upon seeing the women that his one-time student had become, one who had yet to acknowledge his presence, he made his presence known. So, Yoshino-chan, whatever happened to marrying some crazy and active that would make you scream behind closed doors and blush at the mention of the act? Sunio asked loud enough for her not to be able to not hear him. She immediately whirled around and saw Sunio, and did the first thing that came to mind. She blushed. A sight that immediately freaked out Shikaku since he had never expected his wife to act in such a way. S-sensei, what are you doing here? She asked. Juashu-sama let open the gates and let us lost people out to be found. Ha ha, it's good to see you again. Your kid definitely takes after you. Thank you. I dunno what happened he. I bet you do. It's the quiet ones, right? Most definitely, and the lazy ones too. Well, it was nice seeing you again. He made to leave but was stopped when Shikaku grabbed him and forced him to sit, which took a bit of chakra to power his arms to do so. You know my wife, you've obviously not seen her in quite a while, so why don't you stay for dinner? He then faced Temari. You too Temari. While Sunio was doing his thing in the park, which eventually led him to meeting his one-time pupil again, Yuji was busy arguing with Inuzuka-chum about whose battle partner was better. Yuji verbally fought hard for his dragon, while Chum argued that her dog was superior to Yuji's little lizard. She presumed that it was little due to its lack of being there. Why don't I show you my dragon Yubi? Bring it on lizard boy. So Yuji led the way to one of the training grounds that he had encountered before meeting the bee that had rubbed him the wrong way. Once there he belted out an actual primal roar, which was answered by several others from within the forest beyond the training ground. To Chum's immense surprise, out of the forest walked a sleek black dragon. He was definitely not the dragon she was expecting. He's a bit smaller than his father, since I didn't think we'd be dealing with anything or anyone that could really do much damage to him. So, whose partner is better? My dragon or your dog? I'll still say, my Kuromaru is still better than your dragon. Well, I guess we'll have to settle things the old-fashioned way, won't we? What do you have in mind? Why, a spar of course. Bring it on then lizard boy. Kusaki, Yuji shouted, then pointing at Kuromaru, roast that canine. A jet of flame in the direction of the dog was all that Yuji needed in order for him to know that the dragon had understood his command. Kuromaru's honed reflexes were what saved her from being turned into a god barbecue. Chum and Kuromaru retaliated with their own attack, which unsurprisingly missed its mark due to Yuji jumping on the dragon's back and the two taking to the air. Which technically speaking was unfair. The draconic pair would dive bomb the two best, who would then try their luck at even just scratching the diving duo. After a while Yuji grew bored of showing off the superiority of Kyuzaki, he told the dragon to land. Yuji then did a seal sequence and slammed his palms on the ground. Out of 3 bursts of smoke, the more dragons made the presences known. Surrender Chum. I've got you out-partnered. Never. Facing Kuromaru she ordered the dog to perform the drill attack. Fine. Kyuzaki, I choose you. Yuji shouted. Kyuzaki moved forward away from his 3 brothers, and awaited further orders. Kyuzaki use harden. The dragon responded by curling, and covering his body with his wings, his black scales momentarily gaining a shining sheen to them, as if they had somehow hardened, which resulted in Kuromaru's drill attack doing nothing. Kuromaru, use chakra and tackle it, you never know, that thing may actually be light since it can fly. Kuromaru being a nin-ken used some chakra and ran up to the dragon and attempted to tackle him. Kyuzaki, use scratch attack. Bat away that little thing. Kuromaru's attack was thwarted when she was swatted away by a dragon claw. Kyuzaki, now that the bee is down use thunder breath. Fry that little bee bad. Kyuzaku breathed in, and was about to let out a blast of lightning at the dog but was interrupted, when Kuromaru pissed on the dragon's eyes. Good job Kuromaru, another acid attack ought to do the trick. Kyuzaku, get a GS. It's only acid. You sleep in a freaking volcano most of the time. Kuromaru use acid spray again. Kyuzaki, use Kage Bushin no Jutsu. RAOR. Before the acid spray could hit the dragon's Bushin was the one to get hit in its stead. If your dog can use chakra and jutsu, my dragon can do too. How do you know about Kage Bushin? Juashu-sama taught us. Kyuzaki finish it off with tail whip. In the end Kuromaru and Chum were knocked unconscious, the other 3 dragons flew off to join the rest of the flight hiding somewhere else in the forest. At the end of the battle, Yuji and Kyuzaki posed ridiculously, complete with cap, and Kyuzaki looked like a draconic version of a certain yellow mouse. After which Yuji bid Kyuzaki farewell as the dragon re-entered the forest to return to the rest of the flight. Yuji then created a Kage Bushin to help him carry the 2 best back to their clan compound. Toru and Tama both accompanied each other as they went to the market district in search of some food. The apartment needed a lot of supplies in order to feed the Rosuto residents, as well as those Konoha citizens that still lived there due to them being employees of Rosuto Union. Toru and Tama had volunteered to be the ones to do all the shopping. Along the way, they met Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura who had both volunteered to show the 2 men the way, since they started to get lost. The 2 young women were in it for the information gathering that they would be able to do. What they didn't know was that the 2 men were already aware of their intentions, and were also previously briefed about the 2 women. The 2 men were more than prepared for the not so subtle, to them anyway, manipulations that the women were going to try to employ. Ino and Sakura were having a hard time in trying to milk the 2 military leaders of any of the information that they were worth. The 2 men were not letting anything slip, it was infuriating. The only things that the 2 men spoke about were the foods that they needed to buy. Such a shopping experience was very taxing on the 2 women's nerves. They just couldn't get anything out of the 2 men, if only they knew that the 2 men were speaking in code. They were mocking the 2 women, but were telling the 2 women random things about their country. The only problem was that they were speaking in code. Chuji or Ayama would have probably been able to decode the code, but the 2 women that were with the 2 men were not culinary experts. Their limited knowledge of food was their information gathering downfall. As they were nearing the apartment complex that the 2 men were staying in, Toru decided to give the 2 girls a bit of a break. You know girls, if you wanted information, you could have just outright asked. We would have told you, at a price, Toru said. He smiled a little L-ed grin. What? No way. Ino screamed. Sakura shouted and would have hit Toru if it weren't for the man's speed. RRR, Toru said as he waved his finger. No hitting guests, wouldn't want to start a war now would we? Toru asked rhetorically. Well then, ladies, if you won't oblige us, we thank you for your assistance, you may now go on your way, Tama said, then handed the 2 women some silver coins, and shooed him away. As the two men entered the complex, Toru decided to voice his thoughts. Tama, don't you think that last bit made them look like two hookers to the people around us? Not at all, I was just giving them a tip after all. Yeah, I guess you are right, it's not like those two girls look anywhere remotely near those kinds of girls. Personally, I'd prefer a geisha. Toru, your wife used to be a geisha. I know that, Tama, I know, but still, those two really didn't have all that class and sophistication. Toru, sophistication and class or not, I bet you'd have tapped their ass if they had given you the go signal. Maybe, the blondie maybe, Pinky, no way reminds me too much of someone we both know. Yeah, probably not Pinky. Wonder if Juashu-sama'll let us go snake hunting tomorrow. Doubt it. Life sucks. Only sometimes. I thought you were going to say something like only my life sucks. I was, but it sounded so corny in my head that I changed what I was going to say. While the other girls were enjoying themselves in the hot springs and wherever they went after their little soak, Megumi walked around the village in search of something that she could sew. Which resulted in her stumbling on Ebisu training the Konohamaru core. She watched the teens run up and down the designated trees. The tree climbing exercise. She was intimately familiar with it and its applications and uses. It was around 20 minutes of watching later that Ebisu finally acknowledged her presence. Miss, what are you doing here? This is a ninja-only training ground, Ebisu asked. Oh, I'm not a civilian, and I'm just watching you four train. You don't look like a ninja to me, add the fact that you do not appear to have a height I-8. Well, my name is Asahi Megumi, and where I live I don't need some height I-8 that gives away where my loyalties lie. Meaning that you are spying on our training since you are clearly not a Konoha nin. I'm not spying, I've been out here in the open for the past 20 minutes, or are you such a pathetic Junin that you couldn't sense my presence and can't tell that I am the only one aside from the two Anbu that have been keeping watch over me who has been watching you train those three twerps? Are you mocking my status as a Junin? I am an elite Junin instructor of Konohagakure no Sato. Sure you are, so tell me why that Sarugaki idolizes someone who is not you. How do you know about that? Konohamaru walked up to the pair and asked. Oh, hello there Konohamaru-kun. As I told your closet L-sensei, my name is Asahi Megumi. As to how I know, well, let's just say that one of my relatives knows your idol. Really? So do you know where Naruto ni is? Right now? Well, I think he's been zipping through and around the village, so I don't know his exact location. Oh, but you know him. Yes, he's not a friend of mine, but of my relative, who is also in the village. Oh cool. I wonder when I'll get to show him my technique. Well, he'll be staying in his old apartment complex, as will I. How about you guys finish training and I'll wait for you, then bring you over there when you're all done. Okay Asahi-san. Just call me Megumi, drop the san. Hi, Megumi. Konohamaru then faced his sensei. Hey Ebisu stop stiesping her with your eyes and teach us a jutsu. Kazuo and Tamatsu did not encounter anyone that knew Juashu, but in their exploring, they met a bunch of other Junin, Chunin, and a few Genin. They had managed to make their way to the red light district that not only had a bunch of fun houses, but a few gambling dens as well. The two men were very experienced when dealing with the denizens of such places. Tamatsu even more so than Kazuo. Tamatsu's old profession used to make him go to such places and deal with such people. So it didn't surprise him when people tried to con the two of them into doing some things, which the two men wisely did not do. The goal was the gambling den that was run by one of the local Yakuza groups, which was luckily about to lose its grip on Konoha due to the machinations of Rosuto Yunin, which had a hand in the underground and underworld. All that was needed was for the house to lose to two of the big player of Rosuto Yunin, namely a Genri and a Gimmon. Once the two men sat at separate tables to play, the Yakuza locals zeroed in on them. They were watched like hawks. The two men would not be able to cheat in any way. Not that the two men needed to cheat at all. They had magic at the disposal, technically with poker, anything goes. By nightfall the duo had won more than they had originally planned on winning. The two men just hoped that Juashu would be happy about their achievements. Nufukira's wife opted not live a longer than long life, and had SD at a relatively early age, in comparison to her husband. The couple had loved each other dearly, but not enough for them not to have a side order of heir for two. Nufukira made his way to the red light district, not so that he could gamble but so that he could enjoy himself. Out of the 9 generals he was the second to the youngest of them all. But that was a good thing, since he intended to make the writer of Ika Ika proud. At the end of the day, all members of the Rosuto contingent maid found themselves in Juashu's apartment having dinner, and sharing it with a few guests. The only people that weren't there were Mikio, Jiraiya, Kiyomi, Ikaku, Chang'e, and Sunio. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.